Okay, this is my first video on the New Yorker piece by Paige Williams, Kyle Rittenhouse, American vigilante. Oh my gosh, the pro Kyles have been saying this is a great piece. Boy, it really shows Kyle in a good light. Not really, although it does work to his benefit on occasion. Today I'm going to talk about her treatment of Jacob Blake. And then later we'll talk about her treatment of Kyle Rittenhouse, her treatment of the whole lawyer thing, and all that discussion about the militia. So, hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnnie Walker Dread to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnnie Walker Dread Show.
The proliferation of digital video has exposed abuses of power that in the past often remained hidden. It has also allowed people to watch shocking footage and make pronouncements about it on social media before knowing all the facts. Okay, yeah, we'll all go along with that. Last summer, Americans were still reeling from the excruciating sight of a Minneapolis police officer slowly killing George Floyd when another violent encounter unfolded with seemingly similar clarity. Oh, okay. Clarity, huh? Okay, we'll see. On the afternoon of Sunday, August 23rd, 3 police officers tried to arrest a man outside a fourplex in Kenosha, Wisconsin. A neighbor started recording on his phone when he saw the officers, who were white, scuffling with the man, who was black. I mean, they were just scuffling. Kind of like what I used to do with my sisters when I was a kid. We scuffled in the back seat of the car, right? You'd hear, "He put his finger on my side of the car. Oh, yeah. Well, she looked at me funny like." That's scuffling. The confrontation began behind a parked SUV, so initially the neighbor couldn't see everything. Then the man broke free, went around the vehicle, and opened the driver's door. One officer grabbed him by his tank top and shot him 7 times from behind. Notice that a lot has been glossed over here. Now she's going to pick that up again a little bit later, and she'll go through more detail, and Jacob Blake won't be looking so good at that time. But right now, she's playing kid gloves with this dude. Kenosha did not equip officers with body cameras, and so the neighbor's footage was the primary visual documentation of the shooting. The victim, Jacob Blake, survived, but the incident was initially seen as another grim example of an urgent problem. According to a recent Harvard study, black people are more than 3 times as likely as white people to be killed during a police encounter. False. Okay? Notice she says during a police encounter. If you look at incidences where you have a police encounter, the number is not 3 times, and in fact, the numbers are about even. It is true that black people are more likely to be shot by police officers than white people per capita. However, if you only look at those who have actually encountered the police, not the general population, but those who have encountered the police, the numbers are about the same. And so when she says black people are more than 3 times as likely as white people to be killed during a police encounter, she's wrong. That's simply incorrect. It is clear from her wording here that she's talking about the population of those who are encountering the police. Okay, that's a digression. The comedian Kevin Hart tweeted, "What's the justification for 7 shots? Who cares what Kevin Hart thinks? This is one thing that liberal writers drive me crazy about. They always go onto Twitter and they find some celebrity who has no connection to the scene, who has no expertise in any of this, and they quote them as if they're experts. After Floyd's death, Kenosha was among the scores of American cities where citizens marched in protest. Hundreds of people now assembled for Blake, a lanky 29-year-old who had been staying at the fourplex with his fiancée, Lakeisha Booker. They had several sons, and the shooting had occurred on the 8th birthday of the oldest, Israel. Izreal. Better learn to spell. That's not how you spell Israel. I'm sorry. Not even close. Blake had decorated the apartment for a party. God, what a swell dude. And was cooking hot dogs when he and Booker started quarreling. Blake left in the SUV, Booker's rental car. That looks like car theft. Me and my sisters just saw him skirt off in it, Booker told a 911 dispatcher. Blake returned, but when the police arrived, he was leaving again, this time with the children. Did he have custody of those children? Was he allowed to simply just walk off with those children? I don't know. His sons witnessed the shooting from the back seat. Okay, so far, it looks pretty good for Jacob Blake. He's the all-American dude. He's there decorating the apartment. He's cooking hot dogs. Yeah, he got into a fight with his fiancée, but he came back with her car. He didn't steal it, and he took off with his kids because he wanted to remove them from this horrible situation. Now, she's going to pick up again on Jacob Blake much, much later. Now, keep in mind, a lot of people don't read all of the article. So they're going to read this part. They're going to read about Kyle and militias and all that kind of stuff, probably get tired and stop. So they're going to be left with this lasting impression that Jacob Blake, yeah, he wasn't always a great dude, but, he ain't so bad. And he was just scuffling with the police. There's no mention of a knife. There's no mention of him assaulting the police officers. There's no mention of him pulling the tasers out of his chest. Okay? And that will be covered later, much, much later, and it's done for a reason. Okay, we have to skip down about 1/3 of the way through the article, and believe me, this is a long article. There was more to Jacob Blake's case than the viral video revealed. I wonder why she didn't mention any of this stuff earlier. In 2012, police had charged him with battery and with endangering the life of a child after he had allegedly tried to choke Lakeisha Booker, and she fell while holding her baby, a son from a previous relationship. Alcohol abuse appears to be the defendant's primary problem, a court document noted, explaining that if Blake doesn't drink, he tends not to get into trouble. He was such a swell dude. If only he just didn't have that happy juice around him, he'd be good. He'd be a nice guy. In May 2020, Booker returned from a party and went to bed. According to police, she awoke to find Blake standing over her. He reached between her legs, sniffed his fingers, and said, "Smells like you've been with other men." God. That part she could have left out, and I'd have been fine with. Then he left, taking her car. So he has this problem with taking other people's car. Jacob, get your own car. Well, I guess he can't drive anymore. Booker called 911. The responding officers found Booker visibly shaken and humiliated. She said that Blake assaulted her about twice a year and that he had her keys. A felony arrest warrant was issued charging Blake with domestic abuse and sexual assault. This warrant was active on the day of Israel's birthday party, and the officers responding to Booker's 911 call learned of it en route. The Kenosha Police Department's policy was to detain anyone wanted on a felony warrant. Yeah, that's probably a pretty good policy to have. According to an investigation by the Wisconsin Department of Justice, Blake repeatedly refused to be detained. No, it wasn't just refusing to be detained. He got into a physical altercation with the police officers as they tried to detain him. He assaulted the police officers. I'm sorry. No, this is simply inaccurate. He told state investigators that he didn't want his sons to see him handcuffed. Okay. The officers tased him multiple times, but the shocks had no visible effect because he pulled the prongs out. That's another thing that she doesn't mention. Then one officer screamed, "Knife!" The officers drew their guns, yelling, "Drop the knife!" By now, the neighbor was recording the confrontation. The officer nearest to Blake was Rustin Shesky, who later told investigators that he was determined not to let Blake leave and was asking himself, will we have to pursue the vehicle with the child inside of the car? Is he going to hold the child hostage? This is actually pretty good on Paige Williams to include this, okay? So I'll give it up to her in this regard. In a report summarizing the state's findings, the district attorney, Michael Gravely, said that Shesky had fired after Blake whipped around, driving the knife towards Officer Shesky's torso. And again, I'm glad that she introduced this. A lot of people don't know this. Now keep in mind, she's buried this thing way deep into the actual article, but okay. Scrutiny of the neighbor's video footage confirmed that Blake was holding a knife. And no mention whatsoever that Blake admitted it on national television. The location of Blake's wounds, 4 in the lower back, 3 in the left side, corroborated Shesky's claim that Blake was hit while turning toward him. Another thing that I'm glad that she put in here. Shesky had been trained to shoot until a threat was neutralized and didn't stop firing until he saw Blake drop the knife. Advocates of criminal justice reform argue that such protocols do not make keeping a suspect alive a top priority. Yeah, I know. Right. When you are facing a deadly threat, keeping the person who's trying to kill you alive is not a top priority. Now, it doesn't mean it's not a priority at all, but it's certainly not the top priority. Not in my book. Kirk Burkhalter, a law professor at NYU, told the BBC that resisting arrest happens often. Now, this is a seasoned legal expert here. You better pay attention. Resisting arrest happens often. Who would have thought that? And does not offer carte blanche to use deadly physical force. Oh, God. She had to go to a legal scholar to understand that? To justify that claim? Nobody is going to disagree with that comment. By the way, throughout this entire article, I was looking up the people that she was using as experts, and it's all very interesting. Let's take a look at Kirk Burkhalter. Okay, so here's good old Kirk Burkhalter, professor of law at the New York Law School. I'm not sure what that is. Maybe it's a college at New York University or something like that. I don't know. So we got his New York Law School JD in 2004. So there's a lot here about him. He seems to have this real bent about police brutality that seems to run pretty deep throughout all of his experience here. So I always like to look at the publications. That gives me an idea about what they've been working on, and he has none. Now, I know what you're thinking. No, wait a minute. No. There's a couple there. Look at that. USA Today, New York Daily News. Those are not publications. He has no publications, even though he's a faculty member at a university. The classes he teaches, race, bias, and advocacy, policing the police. Okay. So, yeah, he's an advocate. And if you're an advocate, I guess you don't have to publish anything to keep your faculty positions. Blake was hospitalized for 6 weeks. Prosecutors dropped the domestic violence charge after investigators had trouble getting Booker to cooperate. And by the way, this is a common theme. I went through his background, and they've had child custody battles. They've had this issue here with assault and all that. and she never shows up. He doesn't either. The sad thing about it was that there appeared to be some sort of custody battle between her and Jacob, and neither one of them showed up on 3 separate occasions, and the case had to be dismissed. I mean, talk about so little investment in your kid that you don't even bother to show up to court to fight for him. Neither side. Just truly pathetic. Chesky was not charged. Gravely concluded that the state could not prove the officer hadn't acted in self-defense. He also noted that in 2010, Blake had waved a knife in a slashing motion at police who had stopped a vehicle he was in. Okay, I'm glad that Paige Williams, the author, included this. That's good on her. These revelations meant that an incident partly captured on video had been characterized without being fully understood, but they did not change the broader truth that police shootings of Black Americans occur with appalling frequency. Again, this broader truth is really a misconception. It's born out of ignorance. It's born out of an inability to understand statistics. And she made the classic mistake earlier that I discussed. Blake can no longer walk. That's probably a good thing. That way he's doing less raping. In March, he filed a civil lawsuit against Chesky. His lawyers declared that a hail of gunfire fired into the back of Mr. Blake in the presence of his children was excessive and unnecessary. So there it is. That's how Paige Williams treats Jacob Blake. There are some good things here. She does include a lot of detail that a lot of people did not know. People reading the New Yorker, which are primarily liberals, are going to encounter for the first time some real realities about the Jacob Blake shooting that they did not know before. But keep in mind, she is playing it pretty easy with him. There's no mention of an actual assault by Blake against the police officers. There's no mention of the fact that he admitted to having the knife in a national interview. But overall, I would say that her treatment of the Jacob Blake incident is relatively fair. Up next, I'm going to talk about Kyle Rittenhouse and how he has been treated by Paige Williams. And we're going to find out that it's a bit darker. Like my video, subscribe to my channel.